The following article appeared in an edition of the Milton County Sentinel, published weekly, except the last week in December and the month of July, in Milton, Nebraska. Serial killer James Dean Crippen, who was trapped near Oakland, California last week and mortally wounded in a blazing gun battle with federal agents, had several ties with our community. Most recently, on the wild cross-continental joyride and killing spree that led to his eventual demise, Crippen, who is blamed for the deaths of at least 23 people, is reported to have passed by our town on the interstate to the north. Eddie Heekin owns the Sunoco station right by the interstate on Jefferson Avenue. I can't say for certain if he stopped here, Mr. Heekin told this reporter, but if he did go by here and was low on gas, this would be a good place to stop. Our prices are as good as any place on that darned interstate, I'll tell you that, and we're full service, as everyone knows, plus we got a sale on oil quarts going on right now. Mr. Heekin's station is open 24 hours a day, but we don't get too many customers that late at night. When they built that road, now 30 years ago, that about killed things for me. In fact, business being the way it is, so slow and all, I may have to close altogether if it don't pick up. Crippen, who tortured many of his victims before killing them, is supposed to have passed by Milton at about 4 in the morning. Joe Francis, a nephew of Mr. Heekin, who lives in a room attached to the station and works there, would have been on duty at the time. I'm sure I was awake, but I can't say as I recall anybody stopping that night, he said, and if they'd have stopped, you bet I'd remember it. When asked if he would have pumped gas for a serial killer, Mr. Francis, who has an unusual collection of reptiles, replied, "Not when you put it like that, no. But he probably would not have announced that to me. And at night, I let customers do the gas themselves. But you got to pay first before I switch on the pump. We installed that feature on account of certain individuals filching gas." Stephen Dalton lives on Oak Street. The window in his living room looks out over the very interstate that James Dean Crippen was traveling on that fateful night. Mr. Dalton, who has been unemployed for the last 3 years and is troubled by a bad hip, said he frequently stays up late at night, and I just look out that window, listening to the sound of them big trucks rolling by. Mr. Dalton was awake on the night in question, so I guess I might have seen that low-down skunk drive past. It's a little eerie when you get to thinking about it, me seeing a bloodthirsty homicidal maniac like that. I wish I'd have known who it was, so I could have called the authorities on him. A man like that shouldn't be out driving around. It shows you what this country is coming to. I'm mighty glad to hear they caught him. I'm not one bit sorry they killed him, neither. The way our crazy criminal justice system operates these days, he'd been back out on the streets by the end of the month. A background check into the past of James Dean Crippen shows that he was discharged from the Army 5 years ago, and that, following his discharge, he flew from Philadelphia to his home in Los Angeles on a route that would have taken him directly, or nearly so, over Milton. Elizabeth Swift, who teaches the 3rd grade at the Milton County School in Orrville, and who was living in Milton 5 years ago, said, "It really gives me the creeps to know that we were sharing the same airspace with that monster. When I first heard about it, I had to drink a glass of warm milk and go to bed on account of my nerves. Because when I thought about it, I do believe I had a premonition about that time of something bad happening over my head." Ms. Swift said that she also has a second cousin who was once in the Army and who has also visited Los Angeles. When you start hearing about things like that, it really hits home, she said. You begin to realize you're not 100% safe anywhere, not even in Milton. Phil Bascom, who works in the Milton County Savings Bank, served in the Army at the same time as James Dean Crippen. He does not recall meeting him, however. "I was stationed in Germany," Mr. Bascom said. "I was proud to serve my country, and I was with a great bunch of guys. I stay in touch with several of them." Jimmy Schmidt, who lives 7 miles southwest of town on his farm, is one of 14 people in the area with the same first name as the killer. Mr. Schmidt was not aware of Crippen's rampage, but when informed by this reporter, he said, "That's a terrible thing. I hate to think of anybody doing something senseless like that, especially somebody with my name. However, I've always been known as Jimmy, and most folks call me Shucks." Mr. Schmidt said he got that nickname because he was such a good corn shucker as a youngster, although many people now attribute it to his shyness. "It's a violent world we live in," said Mr. Schmidt, "and I guess that includes Milton. There has not been a murder in Milton since 1877, when the body of Connie Hastings was found in a hayfield. Authorities were not able to say if she had been killed or had died of natural causes, so her death remains an unsolved mystery to this day. Milton County Sheriff Thomas Croder said he is not aware of any new leads in that case. A rumor that James Dean Crippen's grandmother on his father's side was born in Nebraska, possibly near Milton County, or at least lived here for several years during the Truman administration, has proven so far to be unfounded. Investigation regarding further links in the case will continue.